So look, Donald Trump wants a variety of military options for North Korea. It's not something that's being talked about that much in the media. We've got other things on our mind, unfortunately, as a country, but he has asked the Pentagon to supply those options to him. And now a new leak out of the Pentagon is saying that they don't want to do that because they're afraid that if they provide options, he is going to choose one. And that is causing a cold sweat to roll down the neck of some of our most experienced generals. And there's a reason for this, because there's sort of a rift between different portions of the White House on what should be done about North Korea. National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster reportedly argues that for Trump's threats of fire and fury to be credible, he has to have military options, from a bloody nose strike that we broke down on the show to attempting to take out Pyongyang's entire nuclear arsenal, which sounds to me like all-out war. But they are pitching it as just getting rid of the arsenal. Now, the Pentagon, the Times says, fears that giving him too many options could increase the odds that he will act. And if you follow his Twitter, that's a concern that he might do something when it comes to North Korea. So H.R. McMaster represents sort of the hawkish part of the White House. Now, supposedly there's a part that's wants a little bit more caution when it comes to North Korea. Mattis and General Joseph Dunford Jr., chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, have argued forcefully and repeatedly for diplomacy, warning that there are few, if any, military options that would not provoke retaliation from North Korea, which sounds good, but then you find out that Mattis and Tillerson reportedly, even though they're supposedly in favor of diplomacy, support the idea of a preventative strike as a useful deterrent. And because they continue to be confident that, despite their anxieties, cooler heads will eventually prevail. You're supposed to be the cooler heads, but you're the ones calling for the strike. Who do you think Jared's gonna stand against it?
There's so much like reverse psychology, right? There's so much reverse psychology. I feel like they're like, okay, we've got to lay out, we need the baby to play with something, but we don't want it to be the keys or my cell phone. So just like put other things in here. And do we give the baby like 3 options or 5 options, or just the toy? It's very unclear.
There's a lot of this in the chain of government where they kick it up and they figure, well, so and so, I'm gonna vote. There's a famous case in the Army where there was a deserter who was executed, and the judge who presided over his first court-martial / execution trial, said, yeah, I voted for execution, but I thought when he appealed it that for sure that would be overturned. I didn't think they actually executed him, and they shot him, a firing squad. So same thing is happening here. You're right, you expect the cooler head, you are the cooler heads. And there is no limited nuclear or other, even conventional military strike on North Korea. It can't be done. It will immediately bring about reprisals and a conflagration of the sort that I think that it could kill millions of people.
Yeah.
It's extraordinary to me too. It's a standoff that could, left alone, just sit for 4 years. I mean, I don't think that Trump has to act on this. There's no imperative, apart from the fact that Trump feels insulted by this guy who insults everybody. Yeah. But Trump makes him look polite. Yeah. So apart from ego and machismo, I don't understand what's going on in that White House.
What else is there when it comes to U.S. foreign policy?
No,
ego, machismo, pretty much covers it completely. Diplomacy, what was that?
If you go back far enough, there's been some foreign aid that was helpful, reconstructing after the war, I guess. I don't know. We've done some stuff.
Well, one of the things that we do from a diplomatic standpoint is we typically co-opt governments. I mean, this is the way we normally go in. First, we go in with money. You're gonna have our corporations, US corporations, go in, we're gonna build you dams, we're gonna build you factories, and we're taking over your country economically. And then if you don't do that, of course, that's when we assassinate your leadership and we bring in our own guy. That's what we do. But none of that here. This is all about stuff that goes bang.
It's good cop, coup cop.
Where is Dennis Rodman?
Exactly.
Once again, he can solve this whole thing. I mean, it is really sad to see that our top military leaders are even thinking about putting different variations of apocalypse in front of this child, when it's so clear what needs to be done in North Korea and how to actually ease tensions. Stop having regular war games. The United States needs to stop simulating an attack on North Korea. Simple. Like, that would appease so many people. I mean, this is I mean, anyway, we know that we're basically pretending like we are already attacking North Korea? Imagine if North Korea pretended to attack the United States every year for shits and giggles. What would we do?
To some extent,
Francesca's point, that's all they want. That's what they've asked for in negotiations.
That is all they've asked
stop
for.
your war games, and we will stop our nuclear development.
And look at how we freak out when they test missiles.
Yeah,
obviously.
I mean, that's lost in all this rhetoric. They haven't really asked for anything that we couldn't easily provide. We don't need to get into war games over there. We could stop them. And then this whole thing stops. But we won't.
And I try to remind people as much as possible, it's very important to understand that if we were to do some sort of strike against North Korea, even if we were to destroy their entire nuclear arsenal, that is largely irrelevant, because if they strike back, whether against us, probably not, Japan, lower chance, but definitely South Korea, they do not need nuclear weapons to kill tens or hundreds of thousands of people in just a couple of days. They can do that with their conventional artillery that is dug into the mountainside and would be virtually impossible to guarantee being able to destroy, even in a well-planned first strike. That is the no nuclear option consequence, is hundreds of thousands of dead people. The nuclear just amps it up even from there.
I mean, this is amazing. Like Kim Jong-un, what does he want? Like you have to think about North Korea, like what they want. Obviously, the people, like a strike might be like, thank God, end this nightmare. I mean, I remember that satellite imagery of North Korea, and you see just where there isn't electricity. I mean, the entire country is blacked out. They're living in squalor. Now, obviously, our country has no intentions of liberating the North Korean people. We don't give a shit. But I'm just wondering, like, Kim Jong, like, what does he want?
Kim wants to stay in power. That's all he cares about. Okay, so he doesn't care about his people. We know that, and as Francesca says, it's demonstrably the case across North Korea that the people have nothing. He wants to stay in power, so that's why it's the insurance policy against there being any kind of conflict. He doesn't want any conflict with the U.S. He doesn't want to launch the conventional weapons that John's talking about. He just doesn't want it. So it's really not a part of the world that you have to concern yourself with, apart from rhetoric. And that's what everybody in Washington knows, except for Donald Trump. As to the one thing you said, I just would say that those poor North Koreans who, as you say, have nothing, remind me of so many of the Iraqis. We talked about Iraq, and those people have it awful under Saddam Hussein, and they're going to welcome American troops. No. I mean, once the bombs start falling, everybody is a patriot to the country that they are living in. So the North Koreans would dig in.
There's no right way to welcome a nuclear holocaust.
Right. No one's saying thank you for ending this. No one's saying that.
Yeah. Now, just to update us to some of that stuff was from a little bit previously, but Donald Trump just at the State of the Union, which we covered, said this: past experience has taught us that complacency and concessions only invite aggression and provocation. I will not repeat the mistakes of past administrations that got us into this dangerous position. Look, there is a lot to criticize in how various administrations over the past 20 years have dealt with North Korea, but here's what they didn't lead to: nuclear war, and they did put off them developing nuclear weapons, or at least deliverable nuclear weapons, for a very long time. So yes, there were mistakes, but there weren't apocalyptic mistakes.
That's right,
and
they
keep it that way.
All Trump likes, all he lives for, all he represents is aggression and provocation, all right? This is an aggression and provocation president. He loves that stuff. He's like, there's gonna be any aggression, provocation, it's coming from me. Like that's, I mean, folded arms.
No, that's a great point. He is aggression and provocation. That's absolutely fair. By the way that we kept this whole situation in North Korea kind of cool for all this time, if you want to call it that, the way we handled the situation was with money. Again, it's the US way. We bought Kim out. We bought his dad out, and we've been buying him out, and sanctions as well. Obviously, they've been ineffective in terms of completely stopping his nuclear development, but that has been the course up until this point.
What do you mean by aid, like offering them some amount of aid in exchange to?
Oh, we drenched him we drenched his dad in money to kind of chill him out. And now it's about sanctions, and we've seen that those sanctions haven't really been effective.
Well, because they've been to some extent contravened by other countries getting in there and helping them out. China and Russia.
Yeah, he makes backdoor deals with other countries.
I also think it's really hard for young people to understand.
This is going to be our last thought on this.
Oh yeah, just that there is a nuclear football. It does follow him. It's not an actual football. It's just a briefcase with a bunch of.
I wish it were an actual
Super Bowl
football.
Sunday. It's going to be a football tomorrow. Okay, and it follows him around. And like for people who weren't around or don't remember the Second World War. It's very real. Holy shit. Anyway, Just you know, put that in your pipe.
Well, it's designed for him to be able to act quickly because that was set up so that he could act in response to what was thought to be a Soviet threat more than anything else.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that's why he and he alone can launch without any kind of approval whatsoever. But it's a horrifying scenario.
What you just watched was one of the videos that we do today, but we actually do a whole 2-hour show every single day. It's a podcast. You could watch it in video or listen to it as audio. You can download it, you can stream it, and you get it completely ad-free if you could become a member of the Young Turks. TYTnetwork.com/join.